have money inside super? Yes, correct. So if you're not retired and you're not working, are you a student? Yep, fantastic. Now, the reason I asked is to get to know a little bit about you. And normally when I do this presentation, I'll ask questions about the most important part, I suppose, in financial planning, or the key thing, the essence, is money. So what's important about money to you? So I'm going to ask you guys to participate in this. It's not just about me. So you just call out from the audience, what's important about money to you? Security, I've heard. Anybody else? Freedom. Flexibility. Sustains your needs, your living expenses, your mortgages, insurances, etc. Anybody else? Opportunity. If you have money, opportunities open up to you at times. Leisure. Education. Giving. Definitely. If you've got money, you can help others. You can give. You can tithe. Anybody else? What's important about money to you? A tool for connection. It can be. It definitely can be. If you take out someone to lunch, money that you use, that you invest, is a tool for connection. Yep. Anybody else? Peace of mind? Definitely. So money can give you peace of mind because it sustains all your living expenses, okay, provides for you, allows you to connect with other people, gives you the opportunity to give to others, to help others, to pay for your education, opens up opportunities for you to do things that if you didn't have that resource, you wouldn't do. So money is important to all of us for different reasons. So we all need money, we all use money on a daily basis. So we've all got to make both good and bad decisions as we educate ourselves about money. Okay? The idea behind having a financial planner or having someone who coaches you, educates you, or mentors you is about making wise financial decisions with our money. Okay? And I believe that in the context of God, He provides us with education, money, etc., time, health, and the such, so that we will then use that to the best of our abilities, so that we will make good decisions with the resource that He's provided. Now, financial planning is... Can you guys see the screen at all? Sorry, F5. Can someone bring this, what I've got on my screen, onto your screen? Well, financial planning is a lot about a process. So the financial planning process has a lot to do with where you are at the moment. So a financial planner will come beside you and figure out where you are financially at the moment, figure out what your context is. So the idea behind that is to assess who you are, what your needs are, and then you normally have a discussion, a communication, and engagement about where you want to be, whether it's where you want to be in 12 months' time, where you want to be in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. Some people, when they talked about money, they talked about freedom and education and such. People will also mention goals when they talk about money. Let me ask you guys, could someone tell me some of the goals they have that are financial goals that take money to achieve, and maybe a step-by-step plan, some planning involved to do? So who here has a goal that's a financial goal? Yep, let's call it out, please. Buy your first home, fantastic. Any other goals? Who here wants to buy a car? Family car? How about going on a holiday? Travel. Whereabouts do you want to go? Around the world trip. Travel. Anybody else? Any other financial plans? Just call them out, please. Investments. Same. Build a business. That's definitely a financial plan. A goal, something you plan towards, something you've got to do, make some effort towards so that you get to the point where actually it starts and it progresses. So all of these things take planning. All of these things take money to start normally and then to complete, to implement. So goals are very important. So a financial planner will sit down and talk to you about what your goals are, what's important to you about money, and what it is that you want to achieve in 3, 5, 10 years' time. So some people who are parents, their goals are going to be about bringing the children up a certain way, living in a certain area, buying a home, having a car, and having their children experience different things to what they experienced, better things than what they experienced. Okay? All of these goals are important to the individuals, to the families. So a financial planner will find that out and more or less partner with them and say, this is how you can best achieve this. Okay? Now, a financial planner will also talk about what risks are involved, assess what could go wrong, and maybe even help them to actually implement a plan like an insurance plan so that those risks are taken out of the equation. Now, financial planning as a process normally means that financial planner goes away, develops a strategy, comes back, talks to you, educates you on what that plan is, that step-by-step process, and then helps you to implement it. Okay? And then they come back in, say, 6, 12 months' time, depending on the strategy, and they review it to measure your progress towards your goal, towards your saving plan, towards your world trip, towards your first home, towards maybe paying for your education, your car, a family car, someone mentioned. So these are the things that a financial plan or a financial planning process can help you to do. Most times I'll speak to people about what's important about money to them, but I'll also have a conversation with them about what's more important than money. And the reason I do this is to come to a final kind of conclusion that we've all got a limited amount of time. In a week there are 168 hours. We all have 168 hours every single week. It doesn't matter how young or how old we are, we only have 168 hours. We only have 7 days. So with that limited amount of time, we've got to be with our families, be with our friends, come to church, spend time with God. We've got to educate ourselves, we've got to work. There's a lot of things to fit into that time. So for a lot of us, being financially literate, very well educated in terms of finance, is a lifelong thing. For some of us, it's something that we have little or no interest in. And that's okay, because people that don't have interest in the financial side normally have an interest in some other adventure, whether it be music, travel, bringing up kids, a sport, something else. So something else is normally their passion. So that's a good thing. But you also need to have some level of education, some level of expertise, some level of wisdom in relation to the money side, so that you don't make major mistakes. So the idea behind this 168 hours is to say, if you're not going to focus a lot of your time on becoming financially wise, make sure you partner with someone who is financially wise to help you make the financial decisions in your life. So getting things right is a great thing, but more importantly is making sure that you don't get things wrong, because people lose a lot of money when they make wrong financial decisions, and it's that loss that then they have to recover before they can move forward normally. This is where it becomes interesting, or these are the 2 key points that I have to make about financial planning. The reason that it's only 2 key points is because I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, and to kind of break. Financial planning can be seen as big and scary, and you can trade shares and buy managed funds and do options trading. You could call and put options and collateral instruments. You can do many, many, many things in terms of financial planning or investing and such. It can get really, really complicated if you allow it to. if you want to go there, okay? But if we keep it really, really simple, financial planning or wisdom in terms of finances is two key points. One is that you've got to replace your income after your working life. So when you retire, you have to replace your income so you can continue living. You continue having your house, you continue taking your trips overseas, you continue paying for your living expenses, you continue living life and finding the opportunities, educating yourself, doing an arts course, etc. And financial planning is about replacing your income during your working life. Now, the reason I say that is because everything that you want to do is dependent on the income that you earn. So if you want to buy a Mercedes-Benz, you have to have the money to be able to buy that type of car. So if you don't have a job that pays you enough, you'll never be able to afford that car. Okay? So you're kind of limited in some ways by the income that you earn. Now, that's also a good thing, so that you earn a certain amount of money or income and you transfer that as a resource to the things that you want to achieve in your life. So if buying that car is important, then you'll save up and you'll buy that car. Okay? If traveling overseas is important, you'll save up and you'll do that. If tithing is important to you, then you'll tithe. If, listening to God from time to time and maybe blessing somebody by giving them a gift or taking them out to lunch or buy them a present, maybe even paying for their education is important to you, then that's what you'll do with your resource, with your money, with your time. Throughout your working life, you earn an income each and every year throughout your working life. So let's say from your 20s onwards, so you've got 40, 45 years, maybe 50 years, depending on how long you work. Okay, during that time frame, your income is what helps you to achieve all your goals, or your dreams, or your aspirations. So if something happens to that money, if you're not able to work any longer, if you're not able to be productive in that way, and you're not compensated through an income, then you're not able to do a lot of things that you would want to do. So replacing your income during your working life is a key area that financial planning looks at. So they're the two key things. So in relation to replacing your income, after your working life, so in the first column we've got replace your income after your working life. We look at things like superannuation, managed funds, shares, investment properties and the like. Now can I just hands, who here owns any direct shares in companies here in Australia or overseas? Yep. Managed funds, an investment property, term deposits. Okay. So who here has a self-managed super fund? Fantastic. Fantastic. We all mentioned before we had super. So everyone inside of super has managed funds. Everybody. So no matter who you are, no matter what the selection you made, or no matter what the default selection was by your work super, you all have managed funds. Anybody who has managed funds actually has direct shares, because every managed fund actually invests in direct shares. So everyone here invests in companies in direct shares here in Australia. So who here drove here? I drove here. Who here drove? Came in a car. Okay. So I've got an Audi. Some of you will have a Toyota or a Mazda or a Nissan. They're all companies that make cars. You can actually own shares in the company that made your car. You can all invest in that company and make a return or make some more income. Okay, so everyone here actually invests in shares whether they know it or not. You're all invested in managed funds in your superannuation alone. Okay, now the idea when you're talking about financial planning is to learn a little bit more about the process involved in that, and maybe do that yourself directly with your own income, your own extra dollars that you have. The idea behind that is so that you'll increase your wealth, you make some good financial decisions, and you'll invest wisely and grow your accumulation side of things. So between the time you start work and the time you finish work, some of your dollars, a percentage at the very least, should go towards accumulating your wealth or replacing your income after your working life. Okay? And some of the money that you have should go towards protecting your income during your working life. Now, if you're protecting your income during your working life, you're really talking about an insurance policy, an agreement between you and an insurance company that should something happen to you and you're no longer able to work, you're no longer able to get up in the morning, go to an office or go where it is that you work and be productive. If you're not able to do that, the insurance company will actually replace a portion of your income. So that's the agreement you would make if you bought an income replacement policy. There are also other policies that do similar things. There's an insurance policy called, give me a sec. There's an insurance policy called major medical trauma insurance. So some companies call it a crisis or a trauma insurance. Essentially, what it does is if something happens to you that's a major medical trauma, like a car accident, you have a major head trauma, you lose a limb or you lose your eyesight and such, they give you a lump sum of money so that you're able to walk away from that without too much of a financial burden. Now, the lump sum that they provide, you choose what you insure yourself for. So it could be 100,000 or 200,000, 400,000. It would depend on your needs. The reason I bring this up is because this is what I call the circle of safety. There are 4 different types of insurances on the marketplace, regardless of what provider you go to. And a combination of these 4 is what provides a fortress. It's what provides a circle of safety for you and your family, so that if should something happen to you, that your family doesn't go through financial trauma or financial crisis. Okay? Total and permanent disability insurance is one of the types of insurance that's available out there that you probably would have heard of. Everybody has a little bit of it within your superannuation fund. So if you're not able to work any longer, you'll never be able to work any longer. That's considered total and permanent disability. And that's a lump sum insurance. So you receive a lump sum of money so that you can then use that money to replace your income through the remainder of your life. So for some people, if they have an accident or something happens to them, like they get a disease like MS or Parkinson's, they won't be able to work again. Instead of just telling you about this, let me tell you about one of my clients, a story, okay? One of my clients came to me, and they were referred to me by someone at church, someone that I know, so they were a Christian. And they referred to me because they had applied through the superannuation to claim on their total and permanent disability insurance, and they didn't receive it. And it had been a number of years since they didn't receive it, the outcome. And they were getting more and more worried because they were losing more and more mobility. By this stage, this girl in her mid-30s was now in a wheelchair. She'd gone from losing some mobility to being in crutches to being in a wheelchair. Multiple sclerosis is what the disease that she got. And of course, we prayed for her to be healed. We prayed for her to comfort her. We'd come beside her. However, she was the one facing the dilemma, the scenario. She's the one that's still living through this. And by this stage, she was in a wheelchair. So she was getting sad, depressed, anxious about where my money's going to come from if I'm not able to work. My dreams that I had, the things that I like doing, like going for bushwalks, going to the beach, taking my dog out, etc., going out with my friends and travelling, that's not going to happen anymore. Those dreams, those goals, those aspirations are gone. And I've got to come to terms with those. And I don't know what God's doing in this, but I'll figure that out eventually, hopefully. This was her mindset. But she came to me saying, listen, Julio, I'm kind of freaking out because sooner or later I'm going to have to stop working. I tried to make a claim on that insurance, but I wasn't able to get anywhere. So then we made the claim for her on her behalf. Again, it took us 7 to 9 months to actually get the money, but we got a claim. We got the money into a super. From a super, we started up a pension, which then the pension provided her an income. So replaced her income, replaced her wage. Now that plus a disability pension combined together meant that she was financially liable and she was financially able to provide for her own living expenses, rates, etc. Now, the one thing that she was really worried about was that she had a mortgage on her townhouse, and that the mortgage was too much. So we reduced the mortgage with a bit of that money, but we kept most of the mortgage there. Then we turned it to interest only so she could meet the repayments quite readily, okay? And we left it, we converted it to interest only for a 15-year period. Now I said to her, what are we going to do after the 15 years? And she said to me, I don't think I need to look that far. And I said, why? She said, because this is a degenerative disease and I don't think I'm going to live that long. Now we're talking 7 years ago, and I've had this conversation with her again. And I said, so what are we going to do after the 15 years? And she said, well, I've worked out that I don't need to spend all this money, and at the end of every single year so far, I've saved up roughly between $8,000 and $10,000. And I said, so what are we going to do with that money? She said, well, how about we pay down some of the debt? So she's going to be able to pay down the debt and have no debt. And I think that when she said to me that she wasn't going to be living past that time frame, she was actually being a bit on the negative side. But now her outlook's a lot more different. Okay? Now, the reason I tell you that story is to kind of illustrate the importance of that type of insurance. Okay? Now, insurances are important, and in Australia, we're actually underinsured in general. And it's not just across your community, but all communities. There's an underinsurance epidemic as far as the government's concerned. And they try to encourage people to actually take up insurance as much as possible. An employer, when they employ you, they give you a superannuation fund. And within that superannuation fund, you normally get a token amount of life cover or death cover and total and permanent disability insurance. Can I just say that that token amount is just that? It's a token amount, because the average debt on a home is anywhere, for a lot of people, the average debt on a home is about $500,000. If you're very lucky, the debt on your home is closer to $300,000 or even $200,000. But if you've got an insurance policy that only provides $50,000 to your family, if you should happen to pass away, what does your family do for the rest of the money? If there's two of you, mum and dad, and you've got kids, and you need to provide for those kids, then the other parent has to work full time and has to depend on their network and has to depend on their church. So this is all okay if you've got a strong network. What if you don't have a strong network? What if you're not connected well? What if you don't have a lot of family here? This is okay if it happens in a church and the church is big enough to support that family. But what if it happens to multiple families in the one church? Now, this is not saying anything wrong about our community in terms of family church, family community. But like every other community, when something like this happens, we sympathise with that family for a period of time. We help them out for maybe a number of years, but we forget in time of their situation, of their predicament. So I believe it's best to take a step back and have a look at insurance prior to something happening, as opposed to trying to fix the situation once it's happened. Let me tell you guys, there's a girl that I went to high school with. I went to high school at Fairfield High, which is down the road, and I grew up in Bosley Park. My brother and sister went to school at Prairiewood, and I have an experience that I kind of look back on it, and it always comes up. I'm always reminded of it. It's because I went to high school with a girl called Michelle, and Michelle in year 12 had to go to work pretty much part-time. We call that part-time full-time. So she worked every day of the week. I think it was Kmart or Woolworths, one of the biggest stores. And the reason she had to do that because her father passed away. Now her father company actually had some insurance in place and was able to pay down the bulk of the mortgage. But her mum had to go to work. She wasn't working before, so she was now still a full-time mum, 3 or 4 kids. Michelle had to work. Then Michelle didn't go to university full-time because that's what she wanted to do. She went to university part-time, and then it took her longer time to achieve her degree. Now, I say this to you because it affects Michelle, her mum, her siblings. It affected us at school, knowing that her father had passed away. It affected her grandfather and her grandmother. Okay, that network had to become more bound together and more supportive. But I think most of all, it affected them. It was more the finances behind all that they needed help with than anything else. It wasn't the family connections. It wasn't the fact. Now, Michelle's tough. Michelle gladly went to work, gladly went to help the family, and it made her a stronger person. And it was an experience that shaped the rest of her life. But financially, I don't believe, I think she could have done without that pressure. I think the family could have done without the pressure going forward after that. I think that having to then really make a struggle for her to... I remember one year she was at university, we spoke, and she was really struggling with the fact that she still had to work, she was still doing it tough, and she wanted to give up the university. But it was her dream, her aspiration to actually achieve that. And she wanted to do it more than anything because her dad also wanted her to achieve that. There was a lot of pressure at the time, and she wanted to kind of reduce the pressure by giving up. And I comforted her and I encouraged her not to give up. And things turned out okay in the long run. She did finish. It took her an extra portion of time, but she still went on. Had family had more insurance in place, or a higher level of insurance, not just a token level of insurance, then they wouldn't have had as much of a struggle. So before I said something along the lines is, financial planning is about helping you make wise decisions. It's a wise decision to have a level of insurance in place. It's a wise decision, I believe, to have an assessment of what your needs are in terms of insurance. It's a wise decision to make sure that you don't make a big mistake. Why I say that is because when you make the bigger mistakes, they're the things that hold you back from moving forward past a certain point. In terms of if you've accumulated well, you've invested well, you get to spend your retirement years doing the things that you want to do, using up the money you've accumulated up until then. So on the right-hand side are red arrows pointing down to indicate that we're actually using up the money that we've saved up during our working life. Now, during our working life, everyone here has a savings plan. It's called superannuation. The government made it law many years ago and is slowly increasing the amount, or the percentage, I should say, that your employer has to put inside super. Let me just say this. There are a lot of other nations around the world who contribute about 15 to 20% for their employees into super because they believe, they saw early on that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% isn't going to be enough. Okay. Now, if it's not enough, then what you've got to do is either work longer for a longer period of time, so you don't work until you're 55 or 60. Retirement age is getting pushed out towards 65 or 70. So we all have to retire at some stage. We just got to make sure that we're able to replace our income at that time. Now, if you've done well over your working life and set money aside, that means that you're going to retire on similar type of income to what you're accustomed to living on at the moment. So if you've got an income, say, of $80,000 a year, or your family has an income of $80,000 a year, then you would want to retire on, say, anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, given that your debts are actually, your home's paid off. The idea behind that is you could want to retire on more money, but you're going to take more saving, more contribution during your working life. Now, one of the things that I've put on there on the previous slide, let me go the other way. Is it there? Apologies. It should be that one there. Is that other superannuation, self-managed super funds fall into the accumulating wealth. The salary sacrifice contributions that you would make through your work, or the superannuation guaranteed contributions that are made by your employer, they go towards accumulating for your retirement. Direct shares, managed funds, term deposits, investments that you make yourself go towards accumulating wealth so that you can use that money to replace your income. Investment properties, they go towards that as well. Okay, so anything that makes you money between now and the time that you retire, anything that accumulates. Now, the other is business. So if you're self-employed, or you have a business, or you're maybe working full-time and have a business on the side. So these are all means or ways of accumulating wealth during your working life, so that at the end of that working life, you can actually replace your income. Now, they're the two key things that financial planning is about. This presentation goes for a couple of hours, but one of the things that I wanted to make a point on. Let me just go through this case study before I do that. There's a case study here that I've put together for this presentation, and it's I've assumed here that there's one income or one primary income earner. They are on, pardon me, they're on $100,000, and we're going to replace their, pardon me, we're going to put an income protection policy in place for them to replace 75% of their income. So if they're earning $100,000, now I'm just using these figures to make it easy for the calculations and for the example. But if the person's earning $100,000 and we want to replace 75% of their income, that's $75,000 that we want to replace. So if something happens to them, stops them from working, they're claiming for an extended period of time, let's say 2 years. During that 2 years, they'll earn $75,000 every year. They then pay tax on that money, but they use those funds essentially to pay their mortgage, to meet their living expenses, and to provide for medical if they need medical. You pay a premium in order to have that policy in place, and when you make a claim on it is when you receive the benefit. Okay, that's crucial. That's the key insurance protection. Then you've got a life cover column, a total and permanent disability column, and a trauma column. Now, I actually go through a step-by-step process where I calculate what I believe that individual or that family should have in terms of a level of cover. Now, I'm saying for these people, if I needed to replace an income for them or for the family of $50,000, and I've actually eliminated or gotten rid of the debt on the home of $304,000, then I account for other costs like funeral or education expenses and as such. That person would need $1.4 million worth of life insurance cover. So if they're not around anymore, they can actually continue to provide for the family. So let's say they've got 2 kids, the education of the 2 kids for high school, university, etc. It's going to cost $130,000. Funerals, other expenses, $50,000. Liabilities, the mortgage, any other debts, $304,000. So they'll need 1.4 in total. Now they've got $55,000 in super, some other investments of $25,000, and they've got an existing cover of $300,000. So if we keep all that in place and we're going to use that, then we really only need another policy of roughly $1 million. So then you go out to the different insurance company, you get a couple of different quotes, and you take up not just the cheapest, but the best policy that meets your needs. And why I say that is because insurance policies are contracts. So some contracts are better than other contracts. Okay? Now, one of the things I've come to learn is that the definitions within the contracts are the crucial parts, especially when you're talking about definition of your occupational definition of what you do or can't do with education. So a lot of policies will reduce the amount of time they have to pay out by reducing what they cover. So some policies that you may pick, there's some companies that call you up on the phone and offer you an insurance policy or an income protection policy over the phone. And they're actually more expensive than policies that you would take up, assuming you went through a medical underwriting process. But you take them up because they call you, you're not making any effort, they're telling you they're going to cover you, but when it comes to claim time, you're not really covered very well. Because you go to make a claim and you can't claim that particular thing, and it's on their clauses or their agreement, but you didn't read that part, and they didn't tell you that over the phone. So a lot of those companies are being taken to the Ombudsman, the Financial Services Ombudsman, or to ASIC, and they're being said, hey, you need to pay up, or hey, we've looked at the case, these are the facts, you didn't tell them this, or you didn't say, you should read this part. The person didn't know, they've trusted you, now you have to pay up. So you've got to make sure that you get a good policy and you don't take up offers that look too good to be true, so to speak. Now, in Australia, there's a strong compliance and ethic sort of push. There has been for a number of years, but more so lately. So if an insurance company does not pay up, they've got to have good reason not to pay on that agreement, on that contract they have with you. And if you believe that that you have a claim, you go to them and they say, no, you don't have a claim, then you should really seek some professional advice as well. Because like I've said before, I've helped people claim on stuff that they thought they weren't going to get paid on when they should have. And we've got that because we understand the system. We know how it works. We don't go to one doctor, we go to multiple doctors. We get multiple opinions. We complete all their paperwork and we go through their process, but we know their process. Insurance is important. Getting the right type of insurance is even more important. And seek a good financial planner. So seek someone who's engaging, someone who's accredited. Let me say this, there are people out there, unfortunately, who say they're financial planners or financial advisors or investment managers, and they're not accredited, they're not licensed. So here in Australia, you have to have a license through ASIC. So ASIC provides you a license, and you have an authorised representative number. So they know who I am. My number identifies who I am to them, what sort of advice I can give and what sort of advice I can't give. So make sure that you get someone or you do the research and find out if the person's licensed to give you advice in the area that they're giving you advice in. Then the other way to assess an advisor, someone who's good, is to make sure that they are engaging with you, communicating with you, that they're asking you all about you, all about your goals, your aspirations, and that they're helping you to actually achieve your goals. Because some people out there aren't financial advisors or coaches, they're salespeople. And they're trying to sell you what they have in front of them to sell, as opposed to helping you achieve what it is that you want to achieve. Okay? So they're the two things I'll say about choosing a financial planner. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I'm not going to cover a lot, but I want to make the point about financial markets and property and the such. This is general advice. This advice is not specific to you. I don't know your needs. I don't know your financial circumstances. But generally speaking, what I've noticed, what I've seen, what I've experienced is that over time, shares tend to go up in value. And I'm looking at the history here from 1985 to 2011. And during that time, we've had the global financial crisis, a period in time where the markets lost a lot of money. Now, in saying that, the bottom of the global financial crisis, from the top, the peak, where everyone was, this is great, look, this is never only going up, to the bottom, one thing get you to notice is that the bottom of the global financial crisis is almost as high as the rest of the trend, the line. So if you're just going up the line, the yellow line, if you just kept going straight, there's kind of a trend. Now, the trend is always generally going up. If you've got the time, even if you had invested before the global financial crisis at the bottom, say in March 2003, when the troops entered Iraq, put your money in, it would have gone up, it would have come back down. You wouldn't have liked the fact that you've just lost some money. But if you kept your money invested, it would have gone back up. And since it's kept going back up. Now, the key here is to not have a need for that money, because if you have a dire need for that money, you're going to want to pull it out. If you actually invest and you've got a financial coach, a financial mentor, a financial planner, then he will tell you, don't take it out. Stay the long run. When's his money for? It's for retirement. When do you need it? In 25 years. So keep it invested now, allow it to grow over time, okay, and take it out when you need it. But when you take it out in 20, 25 years' time, whatever the time frame is for your retirement, it'll be more than you've got at the moment. Now, I can pull up a chart on property and it'll essentially do the same. People lose money on property. I've bought and sold a unit, a townhouse, and a home recently over the last 5 years. Well, the last 5 years I sold them, but I've bought them in the past. And for me, my experience has been that the unit doubled in close to 10 years. So we bought it for 130 and now we sold it for 260, close to 10 years later. We bought a townhouse in Warranora and we sold it for just a little over double, 12 years after we bought it. Generally speaking, that's what happens with property. It goes up in value over time. Now, in saying this, the disclaimer is people can lose money on property. If you invest in property and you don't have the means to keep paying the monthly outlay, the monthly cost, then what will happen is that you'll have to sell it at a time when you don't want to sell it. So again, if you experience a loss, but you can hold on to it, you hold on to it and sell it at a later time. Okay? So that's the generalization that I want to make about investments in property. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we all have a lot of questions, so I hope you have time to join our panel, because I, for one, have a lot of questions for you. So thank you very much. Did we receive the sheets, the papers? Hey, Amanda and Mona Lisa. So the idea is that, whatever pressing questions that you have, you can just put them on the sheet, and then there's a box out there, put them in the box, and from all the sessions and from the ones that are to come, we can then answer your questions when the time comes. So I think I'm looking forward to that session, because we've been doing a lot of listening, so it would be a good opportunity for us to be heard through our questions. So please don't hesitate. As Dr. Annette was saying, when it comes for opportunities like these, your opinions, your thoughts, your questions, they matter. You don't want to leave here with any unanswered questions. So please make it a point to do that. So it's lunchtime. Who's excited? The rest of you, you're not excited, so you guys can get to the back of the line. The hospitality team have kindly prepared, a lovely lunch for us. So please enjoy, and let's try and come back in 40 minutes. So that's 10 to 1. I know I said 45 minutes, but I've taken 5 minutes of the lunchtime, so I do apologize.